What's going on, guys? Welcome back to #AskGSM here today for episode 468, November 16, 2022. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Let's get right into it. We got a lot of great questions per usual, starting with Central Man Network from YouTube. Their first question was, should Sami Callihan go to AEW in the future? I think that would be cool. Sami's been in Impact for so long now, because Impact for probably the last 5 or 6 years, they got rid of all of their originals. I mean, a lot of them left on their own. They haven't released them, but a lot of those people went to WWE or elsewhere, like the AJs and the Bobby Roodes and the James Storms and the Abysses and people like that. They've had this recurring cycle of people that haven't stayed, that will be there for a year or two and then go to WWE. They're kind of like a stepping stone platform in the same way Ring of Honor was for a really long time, with people like Kevin Owens and Adam Cole and people like that. But even guys like that were in Ring of Honor longer than they were in Impact, as far as Johnny Impact, for example. He went to Impact in 2017 and then left in 2019. He was there for 2 years. People like that. Brian Cage, only there for about probably 2 years. I think he arrived in early 2018, left in 2020 for AEW. So they've had a lot of those type of people in the last couple of years. And among those that have stayed, largely, I think of 3 people: Rosemary, Moose, and Sami Callihan. I'm sure there's more, but those are the 3 that have stayed and have been there, have not gone to other companies. Moose, I think, had a chance to last year to go to maybe AEW, definitely WWE, but he stayed in Impact. Ultimately, that was the best decision at the time, because that was back when Vince was still running WWE. And you could probably imagine Vince with a guy like Moose. He's big, he's strong, he's actually pretty good in the ring. He's actually very good, actually. He's become very good over the years. I still don't know if he would have gotten a fair shot. He could have been one of those people that they attempted to push in NXT and then fired. I don't remember exactly when that was. That might have been around the time that they were about to rebrand NXT. So he may not have survived the cuts. He may have been cut as well within a couple of months. So he stayed in Impact, won the world title, become a main event player. There's not much more for him to do. But Sami Callihan's been there just as long, not as long as Moose. Moose has been there for 6 years. I think he arrived back in 2016. Sami's been there since 2017, I think. He did the whole OVE thing for a while. He was, doing the tag team stuff, X Division stuff, World stuff. He's been bouncing back and forth between just regular feuds for a while now. Sami Callihan is really good. He was already in WWE as Solomon Crow. Hated his experience there. Not to say he wouldn't go back, but, at the same time, he didn't like his experience in NXT, which at that point was run by Triple H. So if Triple H did not see anything in Sami Callihan at the time, a lot like Deonna Purrazzo, why would they want to go back? And he's proven himself since he left WWE. But, I don't know if he would want to go back. Going to AEW may not be a bad call, because he has a lot of friends in AEW. It was cool seeing him in the Daily's Place Arena when he got involved, I think, in the Kenny Omega Moose match back at Against All Odds last year. It wasn't on AEW TV, I don't think. It was in the AEW Arena where that match happened, which was really cool. I don't know, I feel like at this point, would he really not make a difference? Not everyone's going to make a difference. It's not really about making a difference. But would he get lost in the shuffle there? He's still doing stuff in Impact. They're having him feud with every single last person they have to give him something to do. I don't know. I would like to see him in AEW. I feel like that would be a better fit for him than WWE. I don't like the fucking deathmatch shit. He's done a lot of hardcore matches this year. I'm not a big fan of those. AEW does a lot of those. I think they could do less. So I don't hate the idea of him in AEW. I'm just not sure he would really get as much of a... he certainly would not be world title material. They already have so many people at that level, getting close to that level. I don't see him going for the world championship. But maybe at the TNT title level, wouldn't be bad. I just fear he might get lost in the shuffle. At this current point, with as many people as they have under contract, down the road, maybe a year or two from now, may not be a bad decision, though, because he's really reached his ceiling and Impact as far as what he can do. His next question, should Matt Hardy bring back the broken gimmick? I would Yeah, I think he should, but he's in a weird spot right now where, he came in, did the broken stuff, and when he first did the broken stuff 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago at this point, there were no fans. So without an audience, it's really not the same. Like, he made the most of it in the pandemic era with the teleportation shit, and it was pretty polarizing. He didn't do it for very long. He only did it for probably 2 or 3 months, and then he brought it back for that elite deletion thing later on in the year, which I enjoyed. Some people didn't. Again, pretty polarizing, whatever. And we haven't seen it since. So the thing with Matt is that we've already seen him do the heel thing, too. It's not like, oh, Jeff's gone for right now, let's turn him heel and do Big Money Matt. We already saw that. They already did Big Money Matt in 2020 or 2021, and it was not good. I love Big Money Matt. I think Matt in that role is great. What they had him doing with the HFO and the fucking Butcher and Blade, it was stupid. They paired him with losers. The group meant nothing. That character had so much more potential than what they had him doing at that point. I don't want to see him to go back to that. I don't think they will, because they realized it bombed. And Matt has even said that in character on the shows and on Being the Elite and stuff like that. I don't want to see that again. So, perfect timing, too, because it wrapped up. Jeff comes in, one more run for the Hardys, and then Jeff gets arrested. And I don't think Jeff should be back anytime soon. I know there was talk at one point, oh, he might be back before the end of the year. No, I don't know if Tony Khan said that or if that was just a rumor. He has really got to prove himself as being completely sober, off the fucking road, not doing dumb shit. Honestly, they probably should have just fired Jeff. What he was involved in was a pretty big black eye for the company. They were very generous to keep him under contract. Granted, suspended, I think, maybe no pay until he comes back. I don't know for 100%. He basically is fired until he can prove that he can come back, not drink and drive and do dumb shit. And it's not like just a one-off accident. This is a recurring pattern with Jeff Hardy. The man needs help. It's not even sad anymore. It's just frustrating that he continues to get away with it. So until he suffers serious consequences, whether it be jail time or whatever, and I don't know if the court date actually happened. I know it was pushed back at least a time or two, which is just fucking ridiculous. I don't know, for whatever reason. Maybe to gather his argument or something. The fucking accident happened months ago. How much more time do you need to really gather your defense? The man's guilty. Obviously they're going to plead probably not guilty and do the whole sob story, because that's just what you do in court, I guess. But, the man's fucking guilty. He's been involved in this shit many, many times. The bottom line is that he should not be back anytime soon, if ever. Being in wrestling just may not be good for Jeff Hardy. Even with the schedule that AEW has, you would think that would be a benefit. He's not on the road as much, hopefully not drinking as much, whatever. Apparently not. He was still doing dumb matches with people like Darby Allin, which I enjoyed, but when he's doing idiotic spots, it's going to, shorten your career even more, and the man's already in his 40s. He's 45. That's just not smart. But anyway, back to Matt. Matt's doing nothing right now. I saw him team with Private Party last night on Dark. Why are we going back to that? Even if they're fucking baby faces. They were already aligned in doing the babyface thing 2 years ago, and that didn't help Private Party at all. It feels like they have nothing for Matt or Private Party, so they're getting them back together. Like the story itself with Matt trying to kind of right his wrongs to Private Party and get back in their good graces is a fine story, but to have them teaming again, I guess they need fucking trios for the trios titles. They're not winning those championships. Private Party should really be back on their own. Matt Hardy, I just feel like they're good without each other. Matt's career went downhill when he linked up with them. Their career went even more so went downhill when they linked up with him. Maybe behind the scenes he was a big help. I'm sure he was, but on screen the pairing doesn't work. They bring the best out of each other in the ring, but as far as a gimmick, it just booking wise, no one gives a fuck. So I think now would probably be a good time to do the broken thing. And again, the weird thing is that I feel like we haven't seen that. Because he was down on his luck for a little while, a lot like when Frankie Kazarian was, when SCU broke up last year. He was the elite hunter for a while. Matt was doing that same thing. I think he's back to being a fucking normal, human being. He's not walking around acting all angry and whatever. He doesn't have that dark persona anymore. That probably would have been the time to have him be broken, where he snaps and goes broken. They didn't do that. I think they did not do that because they're waiting for Jeff to come back. And when Jeff comes back, they don't want Jeff and Matt to be the Broken Brothers, which honestly they probably should. They really haven't had a tag team run as the Broken Brothers since Impact, like fucking 5 years ago. And that was when they were at their peak. Because especially Jeff wouldn't have to do dumb shit. He wasn't doing, they were doing fucking ladder matches in Ring of Honor, I guess, but they weren't doing a lot of hardcore spots. They didn't have to rely on that shit. It was more about the character stuff. The bloom's probably off the rose of that shit at this point because it's been so long since Matt first started the broken stuff. He did it in Impact. He did it in WWE. He did it in Ring of Honor. He already did it in AEW. It's not as if we haven't seen it in AEW. But I would like to see it at least one more time, done right. And I think it would be entertaining. The man has nothing left to lose at this point. Matt's probably in his final few years, if that, in AEW in the ring. I think he's in his late 40s. I don't remember. But, Matt's up there. He's not having a lot of matches, nor should he. I think the broken stuff would probably be the best thing for him so he wouldn't have to wrestle as much. Whether people would think it's crap or not, I'm not sure. I think Tony Khan kind of did him a favor by saying, hey, do it during the pandemic, because that's when they were going to do it. I don't get the sense that Tony Khan is a big Broken fan, big fan of the Broken universe. He's more of a wrestler type person. He likes the Hardy Boys from 20 years ago. The fact of the matter is, Matt's more of a character guy at this point and should be doing more character things. That's why I like Big Money Matt in theory, because he could do more managing and not be in the ring as much. But he's in the ring like all the time now in fucking dark, and it's not really helping anyone, and it's only shortening his career because he only has so many bumps left on his bump card. So, again, to make a long answer short, I would like to see the broken stuff back. I don't get the sense that we're going to get it back anytime soon, if ever. But if it was up to me, I would let him do it right now because Jeff is probably not going to be back anytime soon, nor should he be. Micah does it from YouTube. The rumor is that Stone Cold Steve Austin is coming back for another match at WrestleMania 39. John Cena versus Stone Cold has got to be the match on WrestleMania Night 1. Do you like this idea? I got a couple of questions about this from Micah. I got a question from at Iwagu91. He said, if Stone Cold Steve Austin comes back for another match at WrestleMania 39, who do you think he'll face? And also at BillMeister88 on Twitter as well. He said there's been a lot of talk about Stone... I'm just bumping them all together. He said there's been a lot of talk about Stone Cold doing another match after his last one at WrestleMania. Do you think there's any truth to it? And if so, who do you think he faces? John Cena would be great, but something tells me we might get Cena versus Theory. So, I mean, Bill said it right there. I think I've said this to other people as well who've asked me about it on Twitter, because I made the comment either yesterday or on Monday that I found it a little weird that we haven't seen a new Broken Skull Sessions on the network on Peacock in a few months. The last one we got was in August. People probably don't pay attention to this, but the last one that we got was with Charlotte in August. Prior to that point, we were getting one pretty much monthly for like the last 3 years. He first started doing Broken Skull Sessions, not Steve Austin podcast, whatever that other show was that he was doing, like 8 or 9 years ago. He started doing Broken Skull Sessions in 2019. I think he did it monthly, aside from maybe a month or two where he skipped. Beyond that, he's done a new episode almost every month since late 2019. We did not get a new one in September. We did not get a new one in October. And it doesn't sound like we're going to get one in November either. So that to me tells me it sounds like he might be training for one more match. That's just my own speculation. Now, he didn't miss a month leading up to his in-ring return at WrestleMania this year. But at the same time, it sounded like that was a last-minute thing. I mean, the rumors of Stone Cold wrestling at WrestleMania that year or this year first started up on Valentine's Day, a month and a half before WrestleMania. And it didn't even sound like he was training. It just sounded like, is he going to make up his mind? Will he do it? Will he not do it? And then he probably didn't start training until shortly before the show, so he wouldn't have to miss an episode of Broken Skull Sessions. Now it sounds like WrestleMania is 5 months away. We saw that video of him working out. I mean, obviously he's going to work out regardless. Just because he's working out doesn't equal an in-ring return. But that to me sounds like he might be getting in actual ring shape for an actual match, not just to come in and do the spots. And he looked great at WrestleMania this year. He looked great for a fucking 57-year-old guy. But he might want to come in and do more than just spots with Kevin Owens. He might want to do a full-on fucking match. Like, would he wear the tights and whatever, the trunks? I don't think so, but you never know. That's what it sounds like to me. So, whether it actually happens or not, I'm not sure. I'm not going to say, he is having one more match. We really don't know. Stone Cold, it's really up to him. WWE, of course, would love to have one more match from Stone Cold at WrestleMania. They really want to load up that show. They'll be in Los Angeles. I think Steve either lives over there or did live over there. He had a house over there at one point, I know, from listening to his podcast for many years. I know he's talked about that. That would be an incredible addition to the show. Does he need to wrestle again? No. That match that he had at WrestleMania 38 was the perfect note to go out on because it was in Texas, the main event, perfect opponent in Kevin Owens, a great spectacle. It was amazing. He really does not need to compete again. That's kind of what I feared coming out of that match, was that he would feel good enough to do another one. I don't know if there's any topping that match. That's the problem. That being said, if it's the right opponent, the right circumstance, and the match delivers, then I might be okay with that. The question is, as all of you just asked, who is the right opponent for him to face at WrestleMania? Cena was one of the first people that came to mind, as Bill just said. That was my thought process. But if we get Cena versus Theory, which I think I said a week ago, the idea of that happening at Mania was laughable. It still is right now. I mean, the man couldn't even beat fucking Dolph Ziggler this week, but granted, he got himself DQ'd, whatever. I love the new edge from Theory. If Theory can keep this edge, not go back to the selfie shit, and continue to be built up, be made to look more aggressive and stuff like that, then yes, that is a believable match for WrestleMania. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying at this current point, that match, not that it's not appealing, I think Cena would fucking wipe the floor with him at this current point. I think Theory was more of a threat to Cena 6 months ago than he is right now. So he would really have to be built back up in the next 2 or 3 months. They really got to protect Theory heading into WrestleMania, and then they could do that match. If that match happens, though, and Cena and Austin would have to be a match. It can't be, I mean, it's a spectacle, but I guess Cena and Austin would sell itself. It doesn't have to be this in-ring classic. I feel like it'd be just a lot of finishers, stunners, AAs. That was the one big match that we never got. I mean, Cena never faced Hulk Hogan, and Austin never faced Hogan one-on-one. I mean, we've had other big matches that never actually happened. But still, I mean, Cena faced Rock. He never faced Stone Cold, and that would be that match. So, and it could also go either way. I mean, Cena could win that. Stone Cold could win that. It doesn't really matter to me, honestly, but that would be one hell of an attraction for WrestleMania. And I think that's a big possibility. If Cena's busy with Theory, then probably not. The only other name that really comes to mind, honestly, someone said, I think I saw on Ric Flair's show, he said The Rock, or Conrad mentioned that, no, we don't need a fucking Stone Cold Rock match. I mean, that honestly sounds like a disaster. Rock was, not on pins and needles, but the man was basically threaded together for his last match almost a decade ago. It will be 10 years ago by 2023. 10 years ago was his last real match. And, I mean, the man got injured in that match. He got injured, I think, at WrestleMania 28. He's got injured a lot, and that was when he was 10 years younger. Stone Cold Steve Austin is 50-something years old. You can have the two interact, as they have at WrestleMania in years past. To have them have a match, I think, would be ridiculous. They ended the trilogy on a perfect note, 15 years ago. Just ended, or 20 years, not even 15, 20 years ago. Ended there. That being said, LA Knight, other people have said that, and it's not a bold opinion by any means. But I feel like if anyone can get like an entertaining match out of Steve Austin and kind of pull off the smoke and mirrors and stuff like that, and especially be built up with promos, because we never saw Steve on TV heading into WrestleMania. The whole appeal of Steve Austin being at WrestleMania was the fact that, A, we didn't know if he was wrestling, and B, he wasn't on the show at all leading up to WrestleMania. He appeared at WrestleMania for the exchange with Kevin Owens, which was very entertaining, led to the match, which was great, delivered, whatever. If Steve comes back for Mania this year, he has to be on Raw going into WrestleMania. That would be the biggest difference. And if so, the promos would be amazing between LA Knight and Steve Austin. And I know Steve Austin is a fan of LA Knight because he's had him on a show before. He's well aware of the, comparisons between the two. He's an LA Knight fan. He's aware of him, as he was with Kevin Owens. And I feel like that would be an incredible match. So, LA Knight would also, win, lose, or draw, benefit from being in the ring with a legend like Steve Austin at WrestleMania. Owens benefited, I mean, that was the peak of his career in WWE. But he was already a made man at that point. He was already a made man by the time they got in the ring at WrestleMania 38 earlier this year. LA Knight is not currently a made man. He's not a former world champion. He's only been around for a cup of coffee in the main roster. I mean, who knows what he does between now and then, but I feel like that would really solidify LA Knight as the next big thing in WWE if he were to, again, just be in the ring with Steve Austin, regardless of whether he wins or loses. Him beating Steve Austin would be even bigger, but I don't imagine that's going to happen. And then the last name that comes to mind is CM Punk. I know people have mentioned this. Meltzer kind of entertained the idea, and, people run with his shit as news. A lot of it is just his own speculation without knowing any insider knowledge. So he gets a lot of shit in that respect. A lot of what he says is shit. A lot of what he says is bullshit. But, I kind of agreed with his opinion where, could it happen? Technically, yes. Let's say CM Punk is free from AEW. I know they're trying to work in a non-compete clause, so if that happens, it doesn't even matter anyway. First of all, I don't think it's going to happen. Could it happen? Technically, yeah, I guess. But here's the reason why it probably won't. One, again, I think there might be a non-compete clause, as has been rumored, in his exit from AEW. depending on when it happens. I mean, it's in 5 months. His departure may not be finalized by WrestleMania. That sounds ridiculous, but it's already been 2 months. I know they're getting closer to releasing him, but it may not be official until closer to WrestleMania. Who knows? Tony Khan's got to know that's a possibility, that he would go there and be at WrestleMania. The other big issue is that he's fucking hurt. Punk's been hurt since the whole media scrum thing anyway, and he was expected to be out for 8 months even then. So it sounds like he won't even be back until the spring, assuming he does wrestle again somewhere. I don't think he would be able to compete at WrestleMania, even if he wanted to. That he would even have, he would have to be on the show, and could they save his first match for Mania and he comes back before then? I guess. I guess it's a possibility, maybe. I don't know, but it is a leg injury. Would he be limping around on Raw? I mean, again, the third issue is that's assuming he even wants to go back, and the fourth issue is assuming they even want him back. We've talked a lot about that before. I won't get into too much of it here, but it just seems like it's too unlikely to actually happen. It wouldn't have the same magic as it did, as it would have 10 years ago. I mean, that was really the time to do the match. In 2012, 2013, that would have been the time to do Steve Austin and Punk. Punk really wanted that match. Stone Cold was not willing to do the match at that point, and we missed out on it, which is a bummer. But, I don't think it's going to happen. I feel like, it would be a big attraction, and I know Meltzer said, it's the biggest match you could possibly do. I don't think so. I feel like Cena and Austin would probably be a bigger match, because Punk, for as big as he is, he's already come back in the ring. He was already in AEW. Him being back in WWE would be a big draw, but Cena is a certified draw, a much bigger name than CM Punk, and people, I think, the general audience would probably want to see that over Punk and Austin, and a lot of people right now, as far as the hardcore fans that we're talking to right now, probably don't even want Punk back in WWE. So I think Cena and Austin would be the bigger match. Austin and LA Knight would probably be ideal and more likely. And then the long shot would be Punk and Austin. I don't see that happening, though. Those are the three matches that come to mind. Could there be others? Sure. Roman Reigns, no thanks. I am good on seeing Roman and Austin. Roman's got other, options anyway. Between, hopefully, Cody, you got, The Rock, obviously, and Sami Zayn. And people have said Breaker. I don't think Breaker. Hopefully not Braun Breaker. I feel like it's too soon for that to be happening. But, no on Roman Reigns. Steve Austin do not make the same mistakes that McMahon did. Do not put him in the title picture. It's completely unnecessary. Brock, no. Brock would fucking kill the guy. I feel like that would be dumb. Brock is probably facing Bobby at WrestleMania anyway, so that's probably not going to happen. But, that's what I'm thinking. LA Knight, Punk, long shot. Don't even run with that as an idea, but LA Knight or John Cena are really my top two choices. Let's see. Next question comes from Micah Does It, his second question. Brian Pillman Jr. hasn't been used on AEW TV for months. If he were to not renew his contract, do you think Triple H would pick him up for WWE? And do you think he could get over in WWE versus AEW? He kind of did get over in AEW. I mean, he had that short-lived singles push against MJF about a year ago in September of last year, coming off the Dark Side of the Ring episode on his father that he was involved in. He had that burst of momentum, and that was still when he was teaming with Griff Garrison as part of the Varsity Blondes. And the Varsity Blondes were over. The turning point for them was when they started to be made to look like losers against House of Black. They lost every fucking match they had. They lost Julia Black. That shit was awful as far as the whole storyline that dragged on for 6 months with her. And they've been complete losers ever since. They lost their first fucking name in their name. They're just the Blondes now. They lost their name to the varsity athletes, Tony Nese and Josh Goods. Josh Woods. His name was Josh the Good Woods in Ring of Honor. But, that tag team isn't completely dead in the water, but it's pretty dead in the water. I mean, I don't see them being rebuilt back up. Tony Khan clearly has no, desire to push them as a top tag team on the show. They were on Dynamite and Rampage fairly regularly in 2020 and 2021. They haven't done shit this year, and they were on the show for a little bit earlier in the year, again, just to lose to House of Black. And they never really got they never really gave House of Black their comeuppance. They just lost, and that was it. So, I would like to see him. I wrote a whole article the other day about singles people, tag team wrestlers I would like to see pushed as singles stars. Brian Pillman was one of them. Not that he would break out and become world champion, but, he still needs some experience and more seasoning and whatnot. But I feel like he's good enough to be given a chance to, and the MJF feud proved that, I think. Would he be any more over in WWE than AEW? I feel like it would be the same. I don't feel like one style fits him more than the other. he is one of those guys where if Tony Khan doesn't see much in him, they really should have broken up fucking the Blondes. I like Griff. Griff's okay, but Brian Pillman to me is really the one that you want to push. He has this breakout singles potential. They're just wasting their time as a tag team at this point. They're not going to be pushed. They're fucking fodder for other teams, and Pillman's being wasted. So, yes, I would like to see him leave AEW, go to WWE, get a fair shot. Would he get over with the right booking? I think anyone can get over. I think he's talented enough to get over, and they can play off the history of his father, who was in the company for a short period of time, but, you know, WWE loves their second and third generation wrestlers, so I think he would have a chance of getting over. Sure, could he get lost in the shuffle? Absolutely, but him and NXT, I mean, especially now as they call up more and more people to the main roster and they need to replenish the pot, would be, seeing him in NXT as Brian Pillman Jr., I feel like that would be the perfect spot for him, to be perfectly honest with you. Billy from YouTube, their question was, the same at Bill Meister that whose question I answered from Twitter earlier, the Snow Cold one. He said, with Kevin Owens spraining his MCL, who is your choice to replace him as the fifth man in War Games against the Bloodline? I think it could be Braun Strowman. So yeah, Kevin Owens reportedly got hurt at that house show on Sunday. Just because he wasn't on Raw doesn't really prove anything. Kevin Owens has not been on Raw in like 6 weeks. I don't know why the fuck they haven't used him even before the injury. I assume, I said, what if, if Kevin Owens is hurt, who replaces him in War Games? I threw that question out on Twitter a few days ago. And people were asking, how do we know it was Owens? I mean, to me, it was just obvious because they had one more member left on Team McIntyre. Who else really would it have been? My answer is probably Riddle. The problem with Riddle is that he just lost to Chad Gable on Raw. He's not a threat to the Bloodline. He has more history with the Bloodline than probably anyone else at the moment that's active. But he's being booked like a loser. He's in the middle of the Alpha Academy Ezekiel stuff. If they didn't de-push him, not Ezekiel, Elias, same thing anyway, I guess. If they didn't de-emphasize him coming out of Extreme Rules, he would have been the perfect person for that match. But he's a loser right now. He's a comedy guy. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. History-wise, it does. But as far as the booking, he's not really a threat. Brock, I know, Baby Huey, shout out to him, mentioned Brock as a possibility. Yeah, he has history with the Bloodline. I don't think we've seen Brock in a single tag team match since he's been back in WWE. The problem with that, though, is that I don't think Brock comes back without first avenging the attack from Bobby Lashley. And so I don't think it's going to be Brock. I think there's unfinished business there, and they'll finish up Brock and Bobby Mania. We won't see Brock until at least the Rumble, and they might eliminate each other there. Or maybe Brock eliminates Bobby or whatever to set that match up. So that's what I'm assuming. So I don't think it's going to be Brock. Braun was another name that came to mind, but the World Cup and him being in it kind of threw that for a loop. So Braun beat Jinder last week. He's headed to the semifinals. The semifinals will take place on SmackDown, not this week, but next week. Now, I thought that we were getting the finals of the... Would it be the finals in 2 weeks? No, yeah, the semifinals would be in 2 weeks, correct, okay. So it would be Braun versus someone and then Santos versus someone. We're not getting the actual... I thought we were getting the Intercontinental title match at Survivor Series. We technically can't. We can't because we only had 2 SmackDowns left. The quarterfinals, the rest of them are this Friday. The semifinals are in 2 weeks. You can't do the title match without doing the finals. Unless they do the finals at the pay-per-view and then they face Gunther later that night. Why rush it when you could drag it out till, SmackDown the following week? And Gunther's title matches have largely been exclusive to SmackDown, so I assume that's what they're doing. I thought Braun would be in the finals, and he probably still will. We probably are still... this is what kind of threw me for a loop as far as this goes. And I don't think he's going to be in War Games, for the reason I'm about to mention. But, Braun and Gunther is probably the biggest match they could do for that title right now that makes sense. And Gunther would have to win, obviously. But what happened was, so I was actually supposed to interview Braun today, because I was told, to promote Survivor Series, whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, that makes sense. Like, he'll probably be in the finals of the World Cup. And we're promoting Survivor Series because he'll be on the show. And we wouldn't run the interview until, I don't know, the match with him in the semifinals and being confirmed for Survivor Series wouldn't be until next Friday. But whatever, I was told, okay, let's promote Survivor Series with Braun. I found out last night that I was told the interview's not happening because he's not on Survivor Series. So make of that what you will. I don't know why that would be. Because I think he's going to the finals, unless the finals are not happening at Survivor Series, which is also very likely, but I'm not sure why you wouldn't do it at Survivor Series. Braun and Santos is kind of a random match, but is it a pay-per-view worthy match? Not really, I guess, but I don't know. I guess they might just be doing it on SmackDown because, If I'm told he's not on Survivor Series, and that could change, obviously, then why would he be in War Games is the thing. And Kevin Owens got hurt. It would be weird if I was told, oh, he's not on Survivor Series, and then he gets out of the team, Drew McIntyre, on Friday. I mean, it very well could happen. The shit changes a lot. I'm not even saying I'm 100% right. But my bottom line is I don't think that Braun will be in that match. I feel like he's busy with the World Cup stuff anyway. I know Sammy and Butch are in it this Friday, but I feel like even if one of them wins, the next one's going to lose next week on SmackDown, so it doesn't even matter. And then that person will be added to War Games. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be Braun. I was thinking Riddle. I honestly don't really know. It could still end up being Kevin Owens. Maybe the injury, first of all, isn't legit, which, I mean, it was reported that he tore an MCL, so I assume that's legit, but unless they're really kayfabing people. But at this point, I do think it is going to end up being, I don't know, maybe Riddle or someone else completely random, because I'm assuming that it's going to be, I don't know, because I mean, if it's Kevin Owens, like, is he not that hurt? Does he have to do much? War Games is pretty intense. I'm not really sure, but we'll see. I honestly really don't know who it's going to be, to answer your question. I would have said Riddle, but what we saw on Raw this week didn't really make me overly confident, unless he pulls double duty and is doing the Alpha Academy stuff on Raw, and is also in War Games, and it's kind of a disconnect because he's a comedy guy on Raw. He would have to be taken seriously on SmackDown. I legitimately don't know. Unless Orton was coming back, which he's not anytime soon, it seems like, from that hospital picture that was taken the other day, unless that was from a while ago. I'm not really sure. So to answer your question, I'm going to answer it with a non-answer. I'm going to say Riddle, but I'm also hoping Kevin isn't as hurt as we all thought, and he will still be in War Games, and we'll see him on Friday. On SmackDown, he'll come out to help the team, but I guess we'll find out come Friday. Joe M. from YouTube, their question was, obviously music is as subjective of a topic as there is, but with all the problems people may have with Raw, honestly, one of my biggest for me is their theme song. It does not get me even remotely hyped for the show during the intro, and it feels like they've had it forever now. It just makes me long for the days of the intros I grew up with, featuring the other Papa Roach song they used, and the Nickelback one. How do you feel about Raw's current theme song, and what was the best Raw theme song in your opinion? Is it awful? No, it's not for me. It's not even rap. I don't even know what you would call it. Pop music, I don't know. Whatever song they used for Raw now, have they used it forever? No, I don't think they've had it forever. I think it's the same song that debuted after the Skillet one. I thought Legendary was the fucking perfect song for Raw, and they only used it for like a year, a little over a year. I loved Legendary as the Raw theme song, and then they got rid of it very quickly. There's a lot of great Raw theme songs. I'll get to that in a second. As far as the current one, yeah, I'm not a fan of it. My issue with it is, again, is it a bad song? No, but the problem with the Raw theme song is that, like you said, it just doesn't get me hyped. It's like, oh, yeah, we're here at Raw, blah, blah, blah. SmackDown's the same thing. They got rid of AC/DC, and even that song didn't get me hyped. The new song, I don't really care about too much either. They need shit that, like, will get you pumped, and Triple H was good with that in NXT as far as, like, the takeover themes, and you would think they would do that again. I don't know, it's weird, because even the AC/DC song, Are You Ready, didn't really get me excited, didn't get me pumped. Now, the other Raw songs that we've had in recent years, for the last probably 10, 15 years, did. Say what you will about the bands or whatever, but, I grew up in the same era probably as you did. I grew up on To Be Loved as the Raw theme song. That was the first Raw theme song I was introduced to. That one, fantastic song, that really got me hyped. Burn It to the Ground by Nickelback. Again, Nickelback, say what you will, but I thought that was a great theme song for Raw for us. They used that for like 2 or 3 years, too. That lasted a while, and I thought that was a great theme song for Raw. Even Tonight Is the Night, I think that was a CFO song. That was honestly, that got me more hyped up. That got me more excited than whatever we have now. That was a good song. They started using Enemies by Shinedown in 2016. Again, great song. I thought they got rid of that way too quickly. That was a perfect theme song for Raw. They got rid of that in 2018 for the Papa Roach song. Even that, which I don't know if it got me like pumped, but even that was a better song than what we have right now, I thought. I like that song. Then we got Legendary. Legendary was great. I love Legendary, and it's been all downhill ever since. So, yeah, I wish we would get a new song by Papa Roach or Skillet or Nickelback or something along those lines. Shinedown. Those are all great rock bands to use for Raw. The current Raw song just doesn't fit the vibe of the show at all. As far as a show theme, it's not good to me. As far as my favorite Raw theme, I just listed off all of them that I kind of grew up with and was familiar with. People will tell you, Across the Nation. And I don't disagree with that. That probably is the greatest Raw theme song of all time because they had it for several years. It really encapsulated that era of WWE Raw as far as the attitude, or not the attitude era, the Ruthless Aggression era. Other people may tell you the Attitude Era Raw song. That probably is, nothing is, it's not objective that this is the best Raw song, but, Across the Nation probably is the best answer. For me, I'll just answer it as my favorite Raw theme. The best Raw theme probably is Across the Nation. My favorite Raw theme, it might just be the nostalgia talking, but maybe To Be Loved. I don't know, because those four are just so fucking good. To Be Loved was great. Burn It to the Ground was great. Legendary was awesome. Maybe even Legendary, but it wasn't around long enough for me to associate it with Raw. I just love the song. And Enemies. Enemies was awesome too. So all four of them are great. I'm tempted to lean To Be Loved though, because To Be Loved was like the first, like that was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, like that's Raw, and like the intro on like the remember like the moving buildings. Oh man, that was amazing. Like I thought that was creative. Like, well, the intros now are cool. They're shiny and they're looking nice. They're HD, whatever. That intro with the people on the buildings, on the back of the buildings in New York City, was amazing. Like, they would go from building to building, and they would change it depending on who was on the show. That just gets me going every time. So probably To Be Loved by Papa Roach from that early, or from late 06 to late 09 era of Raw. His second question, speaking of Matt Riddle from earlier, both Matt Riddle and Wardlow have largely been spinning their wheels in the mid-card, while the guys they got major wins over in Rollins and MJF have gone on to be centerpieces of the show. Who do you see rebounding and having a crack at the top of the card again, first out of Riddle or Wardlow? That's a great question. I think of the two of them, probably Wardlow. With Riddle, it's weird because, like I said, maybe he'll be out at the War Games. I feel like he peaked for the moment with the Rollins stuff, and they really should have. The thing is that, listen, I know Riddle's not going to go on to be world champion or contend for the title. Not even technically, he can't. From a storyline standpoint, he can't. He lost that last chance match to Roman back over the summer. He cannot go for the title again. I don't want to see them running that back again. They did the match, move on. And they already had him feud with the Bloodline over the summer. I'm kind of good with that. So I know he's not going to go for the world title. But to go from beating Rollins, who was one of the biggest stars in the company, the top guy, to then going into the mid-card, and not even the lower mid-card with fucking Elias, who again I like, but did this comedy, bongos, non-funny comedy shit, is such a downgrade. It's not even he was going to be downgraded no matter what. But to go from that, winning a pay-per-view main event against Rollins in the Fight Pit, to now doing this a month later is honestly like Vince McMahon-esque booking. I'm honestly shocked he fell this far this quickly. Wardlow, at least, I mean, Riddle's over, but Wardlow at least is a singles champion, and when MJF wins the world title, it's very possible they revisit Wardlow and MJF before long. Whether MJF wins or Wardlow wins or whatever, I feel like it's inevitable before we see those two cross paths again, and it's going to be for the world championship. And I feel like that's going to happen sooner than Riddle's back at the top of the card, either contending for a world title or doing something as important as he was with Rollins. So I'm going to go Wardlow in that case. No L from Facebook, their first question was, speaking of MJF, all these questions kind of segue together, I guess, and the order of them is perfect. They said, do you think it's time for MJF to be the man in AEW? Yeah, I mean, he kind of already is. I love Jon Moxley. He's been the perfect, representative of AEW for a while now, even with, the Elite being there and Punk being there and everyone else. Moxley's really been the consistent one. He was gone for a couple of months due to the rehab stuff late last year, but, he's there. He's never really hurt. He's always involved in a top program on the show. He's always delivering on the promos specifically, but the matches as well are usually great. He's always over. He's the guy. He's the guy in AEW. MJF is the guy that should be the champion come Saturday. I'm sorry, he should be. I love Moxley, but he should only be champion to put over MJF. MJF should have beat Punk for the belt a couple of months ago, had Punk not fucked up and gotten himself suspended and hurt and all this other sort of shit. It really should have been Punk in that spot, and we got Punk in MJF 3, and MJF wins, but we didn't get that, whatever. I'm thinking MJF wins the championship, and he's the guy in AEW, because he is, to me, the best part of the show, and he has been for the better part of the year, along with Punk, and Punk's gone now. So MJF, to me, is the de facto best part of the show every single week. So I'm all for MJF taking the title, becoming the man in AEW, because he kind of already is, and giving him the title on Saturday would just make that official. Their second question, do you think Jamie Hayter should break away from Team Brit before she becomes a joke? I don't know if she'll be a joke, but the Team Brit shit has gone on for way too fucking long. And I think the problem, and I'll talk about Saraya later, is that the problem with her being in AEW, and I love it, I think Saraya is great, looking forward to her match. I think she's a big addition to the show. Again, I'll talk about that later. The problem with her arrival is that I feel like had she not signed with AEW, they probably would have turned Jamie Hayter at least a month or two ago. And that would have been the match at Full Gear, and Tony would have faced someone else. But because of Saraya coming in, she's the new hot toy right now as the babyface. You want to push her. So Jamie Hayter kind of got the shaft in that sense. I'm sure we will still get Hayter and Baker at some point. One-on-one, Hayter will be a babyface, I'm sure. It's the same issue I have with the Daniel Garcia stuff, where the longer they drag it out, I don't want people to care less by the time it finally happens. Like, they drag it out for way too fucking long, to the point where it gets to a point where it's not as impactful as it would have been a month or two ago, when you should have struck when the iron was hot. So I don't think she'll be a joke. I don't think she wins the championship on Saturday. I do expect Hayter and Storm to be a great match. It would be cool if she did win. I think they just wait until Thunder comes back to do Thunder and Tony. That makes sense. But yeah, I think Hayter should break away coming out of Full Gear, honestly. Let's say she loses, but only because Baker intentionally or unintentionally cost her the championship, and that leads to a split, and we get those two at some point in early 2022, or 2023 rather, or Revolution or whatever. Winter is coming, maybe. That might be too soon. But yeah, Hayter's got to break away soon, because it's gotten to the point now where she really should have been on her own a while ago. She technically kind of is at this point, but she's not. She should have been a babyface by now. She's over enough to where they got to capitalize on it while the iron is hot, like I said earlier. At Iwagu91, their question was, what are your thoughts on Batista's last night in WWE in 2010 before returning in 2014? I love that promo that Batista cut from the fucking wheelchair after legitimately getting his back broken by John Cena in that I Quit match at Over the Limit the night before. That was such a great exit, because he came out in the wheelchair, and I've watched it so many times, because he was whining, he was bitching, he was moaning, saying the show will tank without him, which it kind of fucking did. Not because of Batista, but the show only did it only did get worse in the years that followed. And he was like, oh, this company will be nothing without me. You'll be begging for me to come back, which people were. So, yeah, I love that promo. I thought that heel version of Batista was fucking great. Heel Batista, Hollywood Batista from late 2009, early 2010, was just great. And he was very good when he came back as well and turned heel in 2014 and in 2019 as well. But all of those versions of Batista were short-lived. But we got it for an extended period of time from late 2009 to mid-2010, and it was fantastic. So, yeah, I thought his exit was great. And, yeah, he went out in the most, was made to look like a loser, and he did that he really wanted to elevate the show and make his opponents like John Cena look better than they were going into their match, because he knew he was on his way out. So I love that exit from Batista, and I'm glad he was able to come back and rectify that exit in 2014 and again in 2019. We already talked about Stone Cold. That was his second question. His third question was, who would you want to see Armageddon return, or would you want to see Armageddon return as the final WWE pay-per-view of a calendar year? No, just because we already talked about my pay-per-view schedule a while ago as far as what I would do. I'll mention it here real quickly, in no particular order, but Rumble, Mania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, that's 4. They're still doing the 2 Saudi shows. That's 6. An international show. We know they're doing Elimination Chamber in February in Montreal. That's 7. And probably King of the Ring at some point, which would be 8. Now, one of the Saudi shows could be King of the Ring. The international show could be like a Clash of the Castle, could be King of the Ring. So it could be between 7 and 8. There's no real reason to have any other pay-per-views beyond that, gimmick or not. I loved Armageddon as a name. Maybe you can bring it back. Instead of doing NXT Deadline, they could have done NXT Armageddon, but, whatever. Deadline works too, I guess. You can't recycle every former pay-per-view name. You need some original pay-per-view names, and I get it, for NXT. Yeah, that's fine. Armageddon would have been cool to bring back, especially for that set, but they're not doing the special sets anymore, it seems like. Whatever. But yeah, no, I'm good in Armageddon coming back. I mean, it's better than TLC, I guess, but we don't really need a final pay-per-view in December anymore. We just don't. The last 2 years, and this coming December will prove this, that we don't need a pay-per-view in December. It's just kind of not really necessary. So I'm good on Armageddon coming back. I'd rather there be no pay-per-view in December, personally. At Kyle Rochelle, 19 from Twitter. Should Becky Lynch be the last person on Team Bianca in War Games? Will she return in Survivor Series or the final Raw before? I think she will. I still have no idea what's going on with Sasha Banks. I've heard conflicting things between what's been reported and from what I know personally about her status. I think she is coming back very soon. I don't want to go on the record and say, oh, she's going to be back here. I've heard she's under contract to WWE still. I've heard that, I don't know. I mean, I know they trademarked a bunch of stuff. There might be some smoke to the fire as far as AEW goes, but, you know, I thought, like, why would they put her back in the WWE intro if she was going to AEW? You know, I don't know. It's a lot of weird moving parts. I legitimately, at this point, as of Wednesday, November 16th, have no fucking clue what the idea is for Sasha and where she'll be next. I have no idea. I was convinced that she was coming back at Survivor Series, and maybe she will, but then I heard other things that kind of pointed me in the other direction as far as, like, maybe she is done, and maybe she's going to AEW or somewhere else. So I really have no fucking clue. It would be cool if she stayed in WWE, but she also did the New Japan thing. That would be awesome. That would be the best of both worlds. When I say New Japan and get involved in the women's tournament thing, that would be cool. I honestly have no idea. All I can tell you is as a fact, as an absolute fact, is that she's filming a movie right now. I know that for a fact, and because I know someone that works on the set. When she'll be done with that, I mean, she'll be done before Survivor Series. She can still pop up with wrestling in between the filming of this movie. I mean, the filming won't take that long. Sasha would make the most sense just because, you know, they'll be in Boston, but Becky Lynch isn't a logical choice either. I mean, she was involved with Damage Control, and she got injured by Damage Control back in August, like at SummerSlam, then at the Raw after SummerSlam. So I think it will be Becky. Three names came to mind: Becky, Sasha, and Doudrop Piper Niven. Piper Niven just because she doesn't have an issue with Damage Control, but she does have an issue with Nikki. They used to team. She can come back as Piper Niven. I just feel like if you bring out Piper, people just won't really give a fuck, and they won't. They'll be expecting a big name. They'll be expecting a Becky or Banks, and it ends up being, you know, Piper Niven. I would be very happy if it was her, you know, a repackaged Piper Niven. I'm just not convinced it's her. So Becky's probably the best possible choice. I thought I had heard at one point that she wasn't ready to come back yet, and she was still months away from being cleared. But that could have just been kayfabe. That could have just been kayfabe, and she'll be back. So if it was up to me and it is Becky, Becky comes back on Raw. If it's Sasha, maybe you wait until the pay-per-view itself. If it's Becky, she comes back on Raw. She's on the team, and that's how you sell the match for Survivor Series. So I'm thinking Becky, and I'm thinking she'll be back on Raw this coming Monday. That's my prediction. Second question from Kyle: what's going to happen in the storyline with the bloodline if Kevin Owens is injured? Was the idea of it being Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn facing the Usos for the tag team titles? Because Jey Uso has a problem with Sami, I think it'll lead to a one-on-one match. No, the thing with the one-on-one match is that you can still do the one-on-one match. The end game has got to be Owens and Zayn facing and beating the Usos for the tag team titles. A lot of people have argued with me on this. I am not moving away from this. It has got to be Owens and Zayn taking the tag titles from the Usos. Owens has unfinished business with the bloodline. I do not want to see Owens and Roman again. I don't want to see Owens be the one to beat Roman Reigns for the two top titles. Owens and Zayn have never been tag team champions in WWE. Sami's got to go back to being a babyface. It's got to be because Kevin Owens, and he's got to give the Usos their comeuppance. Because again, I don't think Sami beats Roman Reigns either. I think Sami may get a match with Roman Reigns in Montreal, for example. That would be amazing. But he loses, and we get Sami and Owens versus the Usos at WrestleMania instead. We just have to. Oh, they're not an actual team. What fucking tag teams does WWE even have? The Profits? The New Day? I mean, I don't want to see that shit again. What, fucking a team from NXT? No, I mean, the Creed brothers? No, it's got to be Owens and Zayn beating the Usos for the tag team titles at WrestleMania. You can do Jey and Sami on SmackDown, or I would say Elimination Chamber, but hopefully it's Sami and Roman on that show. And Sami's kind of a babyface by that point, and they've kicked him out of the group shortly before then. That's got to be the match. And Owens getting hurt, I don't really think affects that, because he may be out for now, but hopefully he can either A, still be on TV, and or B, they can have, Owens will hopefully be back by that point at WrestleMania. He'll be cleared, and they could do the match at WrestleMania for the tag team titles. So that's what I would do. I don't think him being hurt, because the MCL, it's not like, oh, he tore his ACL, he'll be out for a year. I mean, it sounds like if he is legitimately hurt, he could only be out for like a couple of months. Mania's in 5, they could still do it. And that has to be the match. If that's not the Mania match, then what the fuck are we even doing here? At noob_n_co TV, their question was, your thoughts on Tyrus as the NWA World's Champion? To me, this is the worst booking decision in wrestling history. This will definitely be the downfall of the NWA. The NWA is not important enough at this point for that to be the worst booking decision ever. The company is so fucking irrelevant anyway, even before this happened, that to call that the worst booking decision ever is a bit of an overstatement, because it's at the end of the day, the belt means nothing at this point, so who even gives a shit? It's fucking awful. I talked about it briefly in my debut. Hopefully I do more episodes of WrestleRant and Rave, a new YouTube short here on the channel. Tyrus is terrible. I'm not even talking about, like, people who said, oh, not to me, but just in general. You know, because I know Tyrus was tweeting about, like, oh, you woke people don't like me as champion. I mean, maybe I'm sure there are people who don't like him for his politics. Maybe it's not ideal to some. I totally understand that. And if you don't want to like him for his politics, whatever. But for me, I don't like him because he's fucking awful. The guy is terrible. And this is coming from someone who was a Brodus Clay fan back in the day in WWE. I'm not going to say he's always been awful. I thought Brodus Clay in NXT, not in 2014, he was pretty bad at that point. But, you know, in like late 2010, we're going back to like 12 years at this point. Going back to that point, I thought he was actually not bad. On the promos, I thought he was great. And then, you know, he got joined up with Del Rio. He did the Funkasaurus. I even liked the Funkasaurus. I like the Funkasaurus shit. I thought he should have gotten a run as like a heel, as a dominant heel. And the problem was that by the time he finally got that run in like Impact and in NWA, the guy's beaten down to shit. He's just not fucking good anymore. He just wasn't really that great to begin with, but he's even worse now. The guy's awful. His matches are terrible. The guy can barely walk. To put the fucking belt on him when he's a walking, you know, sign, he's a walking, you know, billboard for bad publicity. People fucking just don't like Tyrus because he's bad. Oh, because he's on Fox? Who gives a shit? Hey, he's been on Fox for years now. How many new viewers has he really brought to the NWA? They have less viewers now than they did even a year or two ago, and he's been involved with the NWA since early March of 2021. The guy's awful. I mean, the show's fucking terrible at this point. That was really the final nail in the coffin between the show just already not being good, Nick Aldis leaving, and then this. This was, to me, the final nail in the coffin. He is just fucking terrible. The Wrestle Guy Sal from Twitter, his first question was, with Seth Rollins seemingly being a babyface going forward, do you think it is time we revisit Rollins versus Roman Reigns one more time at the Royal Rumble, or at some point on the road to WrestleMania? Abso-fucking-lutely. Roman's reign cannot end until we get that one more time. And no, I don't want Rollins to beat Roman. It's got to be, to me, Cody Rhodes or someone newer like Braun Breaker. Sammy would be cool, but I would rather see Sammy as tag team champion personally at this point in time. No, we got to get Rollins and Roman. I was saying a couple months ago, coming out of Clash, that would be perfect for a Survivor Series. You know, Raw versus SmackDown, 10 years, the anniversary of the Shield debut was on Friday. So like almost literally 10 years from the show, Survivor Series, we get them again in the ring, blah, blah, blah. The problem with that, though, was the fact that, you know, the problem with doing that now is that we're getting War Games. So it's not happening. And Rollins is also busy right now with Bobby Lashley. That was another one, too. People were saying, oh, maybe Rollins will be in War Games. That would be cool. It would be awesome. The problem is that he's currently busy with Bobby. He's currently busy with Ali, in theory. I don't think Rollins will be in War Games. I feel like we're either getting him and Bobby again or him in theory, a three-way, four-way with Ali. I don't know what Ali did to deserve it. But I feel like we're getting one of those matches. But yeah, I feel like the Rumble would be perfect. They had their last match at the Rumble a year ago. The Rumble isn't really about title matches anyway. It's more about the Rumble matches. But that would be a great attraction for that show, to have Rollins and Roman one more time. Rollins is already officially a babyface, and Roman beats him decisively, which was the whole story a year ago. He had never beaten Rollins before. He had never beaten him decisively on pay-per-view. And now we can get that. So, yes, I love the idea, and I hope they do it. Regardless of whether Rollins is champion at that point, regardless of whether he's U.S. champion or not, they absolutely need to do that match at the Rumble. If they don't do that there, then it's a fucking missed opportunity. Sal's next question, with nobody holding a Money in the Bank briefcase at the moment, and WWE having pay-per-view changes in 2023, what are your thoughts of returning the match at WrestleMania instead of a standalone pay-per-view? I think I said this last week, but I feel like one of the reasons why they took the briefcase off of Theory last week, I mean, the fashion in which they did it was terrible, but I think the general idea of not having him with the briefcase was the fact that, okay, we're bringing the match back to WrestleMania, which there have been rumblings about anyway. People have speculated. There's been some reports about it potentially happening. I don't see why they wouldn't. When I said earlier my pay-per-view schedule for the year, I would not include Money in the Bank. I think the Money in the Bank show has been one of their better shows for the last, 10 to 12 years. But the fact of the matter is, now that we have 2 nights of WrestleMania, you want to fill out the card. Instead of doing the Andre shit, they do that on SmackDown now anyway, but, to get everyone on the card type thing. Those are the perfect attractions for Mania. You could do one for the men on one night and one for the women on the other. I was always against the idea because, I don't want a men's and a women's ladder match in the same night. But now that we have 2 nights, and they're cutting down on pay-per-views anyway, that would be perfect. So I think they will. Honestly, my prediction for the year is that they will. This is not bold opinion. Not a bold prediction at all, but my prediction is that they will bring the match back to WrestleMania and do the men's on one night and the women's on the other. That to me makes the most sense. So we also don't have to get like this 8-woman tag team title match. Like, who gives a fuck? Just put them in Money in the Bank and it makes more sense. Let's see here. Next question, also from Sal. Do you think implementing War Games into Survivor Series this year can bring back the Big Four feeling of the pay-per-view that's been missing for a very long time now? I hope so. We won't really know until after the show's over. I mean, Survivor Series hasn't been an awful show in recent years, but the brand supremacy shit has never meant anything, and they've done it for years now. This is the first year since 2015 that we haven't had a Survivor Series that hasn't had brand supremacy. 2016 was the first time they did it. 2015 was the last time that we had a Survivor Series without brand supremacy. That's a long time. The thing is that the brand supremacy shit did not ruin Survivor Series. I didn't even mind the idea when they first started doing it. They just never really made it mean anything, and the matches were always great. Like the champion and champion matches were always really, really good. They just amounted to nothing. The NXT year was probably the best year they ever did with the brand supremacy shit. The problem was that Survivor Series, even before the brand supremacy stuff started, still didn't mean anything. 2015 Survivor Series was fucking terrible. That show was awful. 2013 was also fucking terrible. I talked about it last week. Survivor Series really hasn't meant anything, I would argue, until like the mid-2000s, maybe. I know they did the Alliance, Team WWF stuff in 01. 02 Survivor Series, 20-year anniversary tomorrow. One of the best pay-per-views they've ever done, in my opinion. That was special. 03, 04, 05 are all good shows. When you start getting 06, 07, 08, all right, decent. 09, like by 09, 2010, they didn't give a fuck about Survivor Series. It was pretty obvious. 2010 was so thrown together. And 2011 was a great show. That was probably the most meaningful Survivor Series show in the last, 12 years. In 2014, they did Team Cena and Team Authority. The overall show wasn't good, but at least that main event meant something. That had stakes. But anyway, we won't really know, because it's not like the build to Survivor Series has been this overwhelmingly great build. I mean, it's only been 3 weeks, because Crown Jewel, the schedule kind of fucked them, because the build to Survivor Series has been so short, it doesn't really feel special. It's been okay. It hasn't been great. I mean, it's only been like a week and a half, I guess, but we'll see. We'll see after Survivor Series if the War Games matches really make the show better, and it makes it one of the better installments in the last 10 years, or if it's just going to be another show. I don't think you should get rid of Survivor Series is my thing. Don't get rid of it, but I do think the actual show itself, it will be made better by War Games is my prediction, but we won't really know until after it's over. At OjMatt16, their question was, who do you think is behind scripts on NXT? Is it a Performance Center superstar or a returning talent? I personally think it is Nash Carter or Tyler Breeze. I mean, the whole gimmick of infiltrating the PC would not fit either of those guys at all. That doesn't mean they can't do it. Nash Carter, I mean, that would be kind of a weird way to bring him back. I mean, they should just reunite MSK, but Wesley is a champion right now. I feel like Nash Carter could come back at some point. I've talked about that before. Tyler Breeze, again, very weird fucking gimmick. Honestly, it's going to sound stupid, but like Maximum Male Models, for as dumb as that shit is, Massey and Mansoor really make the most of it without LA Knight. LA Knight was really what made that group bad, in the sense that he was worth so much more than that. Put Tyler Breeze in that spot. He was a model anyway, so why the fuck not, Him and back in NXT, I mean, he was already in NXT a couple of years ago. He already had that return run. He didn't really do much, so just put him back in the main roster with Maximum Male Models. But anyway, who do I think it is? It's probably a Performance Center star, because returning talent, who's been hurt that it could be? I almost said Bea Priestley. What's her name? I mean, she wasn't we haven't seen her since Worlds Collide. Blair Davenport. We haven't seen her since Worlds Collide, but it's not why would she need to infiltrate the PC if she was already here? So I don't know. We already have Isla Dawn, who's awful. I'm glad it's not her, but I hated the fact that she cost Kaylee Ray the match last night, because I do not want Isla Dawn on the show. She's just not that good at all. Her fucking what is the hocus pocus bullshit she does is fucking terrible if you watch NXT UK, which you probably didn't because no one did towards the end. I honestly don't really know. I was thinking the same thing. I'm thinking people are probably going to get too excited. I'm thinking, since we're already getting Dominic Dijakovic, T-Bar, whatever the fuck you want to call him, since we're getting him back and he's like a main roster guy, I don't think we're getting two of those. I was thinking, what if it's someone from the main roster? I mean, it could be, and I wouldn't be upset depending on who it is. But I'm thinking it's probably someone new that we haven't seen before. And that's who it ends up being. I think it's going to end up being disappointing. People are going to be expecting, it's this person. I mean, Ava Raine was a new person, but people knew who she was because she's The Rock's daughter, so she got a reaction. If it's some Joe Schmo they just hired from the athletic tryouts, they probably won't get much of a reaction, but it does give them a gimmick coming in. Whatever that gimmick is. I don't know if it's Solomon Crow, Sami Callihan coming back as the hacker. I don't know. I guess we'll find out next week. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check it out. His question was, has NXT basically jumped the shark with their women's division? Or at least done so with the women's championship? Because there are some talents, but it just feels like they're spinning their wheels. I don't mind the NXT women's division, but I just got done talking about this. Isla Dawn is awful. She is not a good addition to the division. It adds depth. I mean, I guess, but Dawn is just so fucking boring. Nikita Lyons is also just not good. Maybe she'll improve. I mean, I guess she kind of has improved. That tag team title match that she was in a week or two ago, probably the best of her career so far, which isn't, very long career, but she was fine in that match. She's not that good yet. I don't know. The division, we were spoiled because it was so good for so long with Triple H in charge. From 2014 through, and it had its ups and downs, but from 2014 through, I would say probably up until last year in 2021, that was the golden years of that division. Mandy Rose has done a great job with the title. So I wouldn't even say that the title scene has jumped the shark, because they're clearly building to her losing. Hopefully not to Nikita Lyons. Nikita Lyons is fucking awful, so I hope it's not her. I mean, I guess she could lose it in this upcoming Scramble match, which would be fucking dumb. If she was champion for a year and then lost it without even being pinned for it, I feel like that'd be silly. I don't know. I'm thinking the division's fine, but I don't like Wendy Chu. She's the opposite. She's a very good worker, but her gimmick is awful. Tiffany Stratton improved, and she took time off. She'll be back soon. There's a lot of, unseasoned women, but that's what happens when you rush people onto the show so quickly. Lash Legend isn't very good, but thankfully we don't see a lot of her these days. And maybe she'll improve, who knows. But yeah, the division's fine. I mean, it's not bad. I don't know if they're spinning their wheels, because at least they have, feuds that outside of the title picture and matches set up that aren't for championship implications. Like Nikita Lyons and Zoe Stark is a non-title feud. Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade was a non-title feud. I like Cora Jade. I like Roxanne Perez. So the division isn't all bad. I don't know if I'm as negative on it as you are, but, with the women's title too, again, Mandy Rose has had some really good matches as champion. The Kaylee Ray matches weren't very good, but the one last night was fun. The three-way at Worlds Collide was fun. I'm trying to think what else she's had. The Roxanne Perez match on TV was good. The Zoe Stark match was good. So she's had a couple of good performances as champion, especially lately. But yeah, they're just hopefully building to someone to take the belt off of her that can really, benefit from it. Who that person is, I don't know. So they are kind of in a holding pattern until Mandy drops the title. But it's not as if the division is completely irrelevant or they have no talent, because I would argue they definitely do. Just not as much as they did maybe even a year or two ago in terms of the experience and the star power of said talent. John's second question, what are the chances Full Gear could be a good pay-per-view, but also the start of the downturn for AEW? It seems like since the media scrum after All Out, that the company is having issues both on TV and behind the scenes. I mean, yeah, they are. They're doing a media scrum, Nick Hausman confirmed, after Full Gear on Saturday. So I'm kind of more so looking for that than, I'm looking more forward to that than I am the pay-per-view itself. I doubt anything notable happens, but I am very curious to see what kind of questions are asked, if anything of actual importance beyond, how good was the show, Tony? Who gives a shit? Anyway. Yeah, I think it'll be a good show. I really hope that they can get back on track with the show. I don't think it's going to be the beginning of the end for this company. I think, if anything, it'll have the opposite effect where it gets them back on track. That's what I'm expecting. I don't expect it to be a bad show. The build has not been very exciting at all. I don't expect it to be a bad show where it's they lost all their momentum. It's an awful show, and this was their worst pay-per-view yet. I don't think so. It could be. I'm not saying it won't be, but I'm looking forward to this show as a show that will hopefully begin the build and getting AEW some momentum back, because their shows have lost a lot of momentum, like to the point where they're in Connecticut tonight for Dynamite, and I just don't care. I don't care, and I'm not going. I was at Rampage here in Connecticut a couple of weeks ago, but Bridgeport's a shithole for starters, and I already went to Dynamite there back in February when the show was better, so I have no desire to go tonight. Let's see. Next question at E13A from Twitter. His question was, is Austin Theory a future WWE Universal Champion? I think so. I mean, maybe not right now. Just because he was buried last week. There's no doubt about that. He was absolutely buried with the way that he was booked in that failed, awful, worst of all time Money in the Bank cash-in. Do I still think he can be a world champion? Yeah. If they can continue booking him properly after what we saw on Raw this week, then yeah. At the rate that he's going, it's been one night, I think he can be. He has that in him. It's more a matter of how he's booked. But yes, I do think he can be and will be a future world champion in WWE. His second question is, Saraya a good addition to AEW? Yeah, I think so. I don't want her to overshadow everyone else. I don't think she will, because apparently, according to her, she's only going to wrestle once a month anyway, at most. I'm looking forward to her match on Saturday. I think she is a talent. She has star power. She's as popular as she is. I love the promo she cut last week. And hopefully the match on Saturday is good. So yeah, their women's division needs more direction and star power. But again, it's more about the portrayal of the women's division than it is any one particular talent. They have the talent now. For a while, it's like they don't really have anyone that stands out. But between Thunder Rosa coming in, Ruby Soho, Toni Storm, Saraya, among others, they have the talent now to fill out Athena as well. A really good women's division. Jade Cargill, Britt Baker. Now it's what Tony Khan does with said women that really makes or breaks that division. So she's a good addition, but it's really going to come down to the booking and the presentation of the women's division that really makes it mean more than it does right now. His third question, and the last question of the episode, is EC3 good? Yeah, so the thing with EC3, I like EC3. I think he is good. I thought his match with Tom Latimer at NWA Hard Times 3 on Saturday was boring as fuck. The thing with EC3 is that I think he's a good worker. His matches have never been his strong suit. He's had a lot of really good matches in his career, but EC3's strong suit was always his promos and his character work, particularly in Impact, obviously. The thing with that, though, is that he's completely ditched that whole 1% thing. I applaud him for trying something new. The control your narrative thing has just been a complete bust. He's been doing it for 2 years now. It's not interesting. It's not exciting. It really hasn't been... It hasn't generated any great storylines. He's tried with it. He tried with it in Impact. He tried with it in Ring of Honor. He's doing it now in NWA. Control Your Narrative, CYN. It's just not... It's not good. So if that's his entire personality, then currently, no, he's not that very good. Because I haven't seen many good matches with him in it in the last year. In the last year or two, he's had some decent ones, like with Jay Briscoe in Ring of Honor. But though, I mean, I think he thinks it's like the next coming of like this great concept or idea. Honestly, I think he'd be more over and better off just going back to the drawing board and doing the 1% shit again. Because the control your narrative shit has just been boring as fuck. It's not interesting. And again, I thought it was a cool concept at first because it was at least something different to reinvent himself. But it has not gone over. And it honestly has a stench on it that you just can't wipe away at this point. Because the CYN shit is just terrible. And people associate CYN with being a scam and being a faulty promotion. All their talent left and whatever talent they had. So, yeah, I would just ditch that shit and go back to being what he was before. The Ethan Carter III to a certain extent, or at least a revamped version of that. Because whatever he's doing now is just not working. And if all he is really a character in promos, or at least the majority of what makes up EC3 and as good as he is, if that's what he's doing, then the answer is no. He is not good right now. But he can be if he ditched the CYN shit and did either something similar to what he was doing previously, or at least something more interesting than what he's doing now. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 468 here today of #AskGSM for Wednesday, November 16, 2022. Happy birthday to Mr. Marceau, by the way. It is his birthday here on Wednesday, November 16th. Should have said that at the beginning. But, yeah, Mr. Marceau is celebrating a birthday here today. Happy birthday to him. It was my brother's birthday yesterday. Happy birthday to him. And it's my dad's birthday tomorrow, so happy birthday to him as well. 3 straight birthdays. So, big birthday week. But we got Full Gear on Saturday, Survivor Series next week. Here's the thing. I'll be at SmackDown on Friday. I'm going to SmackDown on Friday here in Connecticut. Dynamite's in Connecticut tonight. I'm not going to fucking Dynamite. I was at Rampage already. I'm good. I'll be at SmackDown tonight. I'll be at SmackDown very likely next week in Providence, and I'll also be at Survivor Series next weekend. So a lot of shit coming up. November's been a November to remember. A lot of cool stuff going on, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the month and what it brings, and really the rest of the year. But it will not be made great without your great questions here on the show. So if you want to send in a question here to hashtag, be sure to do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.Jason.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. With all that being said, guys, have an awesome one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.